You'll see the little red bar pop up. And there we are. We are only 15 minutes late, but here we are. My name is Meryl Fury. I am co-founder of Sage Circle Alliance. And today we are speaking with one of our founding members, the very witty Mr. Glenn Mercer, who is also an author and generally all around great guy. So welcome, Glenn. Good to be with you today.
Nice to be with you, Meryl.
Yeah. So today is day 11 of our charter member drive. And I am going to say right up front, I was just outside in a lot of wind, as Glenn can attest. And so my eyes are tearing and my nose is running. So please forgive me. This is in nursing, we call these a biological spill. This is so just forgive me as I, dab my eyes and things like that. Today we are talking about the whole food plant-based movement and a little bit about the history and a little bit about the momentum and the impact it's had on the health and well-being of humans, animals, and planet. Pardon me. So, Glenn, please first, introduce yourself in a way that's more appropriate than what I just did. Even though being an all-around swell guy is a pretty good introduction, I think.
Well, if only it were true.
Oh, well, I'm sure it is.
Yeah. I'm Glenn Mercer. I'm a playwright, screenwriter, and author of books that advocate the low-fat, whole food, plant-based diet. Many of those books, by the way, are co-authored. So I've co-authored books with Howard Lyman and with Chef AJ, with Chef Del Shroof, and others.
And in his background, hidden just beneath the surface view, he also studied stand-up comedy.
I don't know if I studied it, but I did it.
I think that's studying. If you're in it and doing it, yes, you're studying, you're practicing, right?
Yeah.
So he's a pretty witty guy, pretty witty. So today we're just going to talk a little bit about, let's start with the history of what we know of the plant-based movement. Now, Glenn, you've been at this for a long time. When did you start your journey? How old were you?
I was 17. I had been thinking about being a vegetarian for a year or two because my relatives had died before I was born or they had died in the last couple of years. I lost two uncles when I was 16. And they were in their 40s and 50s. So there was just a lot of death in my family. Most of the men on my father's side of the family died in their 50s. And on my mother's side, I lost those two uncles. So I didn't want to be middle-aged at 25. So I don't remember how I knew that meat causes heart attacks. I think just everybody knew it. And that's the strange thing. Everybody knew it even way back then. Because when I told people, I don't remember people saying, really? Meat causes heart attacks? They just said, oh, okay, maybe that's smart. So I think people have known for a long, long time that meat causes heart attacks. The Framingham study started, I think, in 1948. And the Ansel Keys studies were, I think, in the 50s and 60s. So I think people knew it then. And I wasn't met with a lot of surprise when I told people that I was stopping eating meat because there was so much heart disease in my family.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So, Glenn, I'm going to guess maybe 10 years older than I am or so. So you have that much history before me, right? And I started my plant-based journey when I was 15. So you and I were kind of
So you're 15 and I'm 25 is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Sure, we can go with that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what we did know for sure is that people who, and this is like since as far back as Henry VIII at least, right?
I didn't know him.
You know what? I've only studied him. I haven't,
Okay.
Didn't know him. But we know that he had gout and he had like a major problem with his girth. But back then, those were the signs of a rich life.
He also had some relationship problems, I think.
He was a bit of a womanizer
Yeah.
and a murderer. But beside that, he also had these issues with food.
Uh-huh.
And the fact that the diet that they ate back in the we call that the Renaissance period, I think, or maybe a little bit before that, I don't know, was very heavy in meats and animal products. And that was the diet of affluence. And those were the diseases of affluence. So that gout and the obesity, and that was seen as something like, that was a desirable trait back then. That meant you were wealthy. But those people also died of those same kinds of diseases that the people suffer from now that eat that way. So historically, we know, like you said, people knew meat causes heart disease. Yeah, pretty much. It was well demonstrated for a few hundred years. Most people, though, didn't get to eat a diet, an affluent type diet. Most of the people were eating grains and beans and vegetables, stuff that was growing in their yard. They had little gardens and things like that. And that's what kept people alive for the most part. People weren't eating massive amounts of meats because that meant you had to go hunt. And there was no refrigeration. There was no way to keep it. So then we fast forward to, let's say, 1930 something, I think is when I heard the first references to veganism started. And it started maybe in Germany, somewhere in Europe, I think. And veganism became a thing where people were just preferred. And actually, it started out, I think, at least by the time it got to the United States, vegetarian meant you were eating vegetables, not vegetables and milk and eggs. And then we landed where we are now. This is very, very fast forward, very fast forward. So when you were a kid and you first started, were you actually vegan or were you more vegetarian?
I became a vegetarian at 17, and I had an obese aunt and uncle. They were each about 100 pounds overweight. And they were very alarmed to learn that I wasn't going to be eating meat. And they said, "Where will you get your protein?" And I took a wild guess and I said, maybe from cheese. And so I kept eating cheese stupidly for the next 19 years. I didn't eat eggs. I didn't drink milk. I had no animal products except cheese, just in case I needed it for the protein. Okay. And then I started getting chest pains in my 30s, in my mid to late 30s. Mid 30s. It was weird. I've never heard any doctor explain exactly what it was, but it felt like an electrical shock. I would walk into a room and get this electrical shock, and it would almost knock me to the ground.
Wow.
And it happened about a dozen times. And I thought, should I go to a cardiologist? I don't like going to doctors. And I was too young to go to a cardiologist. And I thought, boy, this is unfair. I have such bad genes that I've been a vegetarian for 19 years and I'm getting heart disease. And then I thought about it and I said, now, why don't I eat meat? Because of the saturated fat and cholesterol. That's what causes heart attacks. But I'm eating cheese, which is saturated fat and cholesterol. So I gave up the cheese, never went to a doctor, never had that pain again. So that was about 33 years ago or so when I gave up the 32. I gave up the cheese and became vegan.
Now, I see that our other good friend, Peggy Krause, is in the background here. So I'm going to bring her on. Hey, Peggy.
Hello, Peggy.
Hi, Glenn. Hi, Meryl.
Hello.
How are you?
Welcome.
Thank you. How are you both today?
Good.
Doing great. Doing great. Good to see you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so I'm hearing a little bit of feedback. I
Maybe
don't know.
I dialed in on my phone.
Oh,
Let me get out and let me get in on my laptop.
okay. I'll let
Okay.
you right back in.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. All right. So how old were you when you were feeling these pains, these
I
electrical?
think about 35.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's scary stuff.
Yeah. It was stupid to eat cheese.
Well,
There's
what
nothing I
eating?
regret more.
Well, you've lived a pretty easy life if there's nothing you regret more than eating cheese. That's pretty cool. Really good. All right. So historically, then let's just look like at bigger picture stuff. The whole food plant-based movement, as far as you know, like, okay, let me ask you this, because this is something that I've thought about a fair amount. When you were a kid, were there any books or anything that you could refer to?
Well, I'm sure there were, but I don't remember reading any of them.
Mm.
I remember listening to the comedian Dick Gregory talking about being a vegetarian. He was a hero of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember
Now I
reading any
cannot
books.
hear you.
Uh-oh.
Can you hear me?
We
Yes?
can hear you, yes. But she can't hear us respond.
Got it. Okay. Very good.
All right. So Glenn is talking about what kind of reference books he may or may not have had when he was first transitioning. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't remember reading any books. I just had heard, knew that meat causes heart disease. You just when you look at a hamburger, it looks like a heart attack, doesn't it? I mean, you look at that and you think that's going in my body. I mean, it looks like a heart attack. So just based on that, um, uh, I gave up meat, and I never considered, because I hear that some people are lapsed vegans or lapsed vegetarians and they go back to eating meat. It never even occurred to me that I would ever go back to it. I remember I decided on the first day of summer vacation when I was 17 that I would start then becoming a vegetarian. And I got up in the morning, had an English muffin with jam for breakfast. The phone rang. It was my old buddy Dave. I said, "Hey, Dave, congratulate me. I became a vegetarian." He said, "Great. Since when?" And I said, "Well, since breakfast." And he laughed at me. And that was, 51 years ago, and I haven't had meat since. So maybe it helped that he laughed at me. I don't know. But it never occurred to me that I would ever lapse.
Yeah. I remember when I started, so like I said, I was 15, which meant it was like 1976-ish or so, somewhere in there, 75, 76. And I remember there not being any books, or at least I didn't know to look for books. I had Dick Gregory's book, but that came much later. I had Diet for a Small Planet by Frances Moore Lapay, wonderful stuff. And I had another book called Survival into the 21st Century, which was written by a guy named Victoras Kulvinskas, who got ridden out of the country on a rail, and like he had to go live in Mexico or somewhere
What did
because
he do wrong?
I think he crossed the line of telling people how to take care of their bodies. And one of the things he did say was he was kind of aiming people to go toward breatharianism, living on
Breatharianism?
breatharian. So
you could lose weight on that diet.
you sure can. And it's really hard to live off sunshine if you don't have chlorophyll. But that was his thing. He was kind of promoting that water and sun and air. I found that book fascinating. And for a little while, I went down to eating very, very little, very, very little. But that did not work for very long.
Did you get hungry maybe?
No. It's so funny. There are people in the world who are foodies and who love. They're like wired to eat, and they can remember, like you said, you remember you're eating a English muffin with jam or something, right, as your
Yeah.
first meal. I don't really have food memories. I do have fasting memories, though. Things, memories of not eating for days at a time, which I'm not going to say that I necessarily recommend unless you are being monitored and carefully observed. Let me just say that I'm not trying to recommend that for anybody. Um, that's a whole world by itself, but that's what I did. I fasted, and it had something to do with Dick Gregory's book and this book by Viktoras Kulvinskas. But those are the only books that I know of from back then, you know. What about you, Peggy? Did you have any reference books that you used to go from?
I did, but I first met most of the authors of the book. So my first exposure to this was Dr. Furman. Did not read his book. Then it was Essie. I heard him talk, and I read his book. That was my defining moment that I don't need to eat meat anymore. Then I met Dr. Campbell, and I read the China Study just a couple months later, and that was it for me.
Mm.
So I have to say, my husband, being a commercial fisherman, he would still bring home fish every once in a while, and he would get a little upset if I wouldn't eat it, because of course this is his livelihood, and this is what I'm insulting him by not eating the meat. I mean, the fish. So I just ate it until a couple of years later, where I give it up.
Mhm.
So that's
So what does your husband say now?
oh, well, he's still fishing. He's ready to sell his boat, but he's still fishing. But he doesn't bring fish home but a couple times a year. And I conveniently excuse myself because I don't like the smell and it stinks up the house. But he'll eat fish when we go out. But otherwise, he's happy to eat what I cook, and he's the first one to say, "Let's have something healthy tonight." Not that
Now,
not that we don't eat healthy anyway, but.
in what waters does he fish?
Shinnecock Bay. Well, I'm sorry, not he fishes out of Shinnecock, but he fishes the Atlantic Ocean.
Okay. And has he found the fish stock reduced compared to when he used to fish?
It's cyclical. So, for instance, when he used to fish in the bay, he used to they caught thousands of horseshoe crabs, thousands, and they're not worth a lot of money. But when you're catching thousands, even 50 cents for the males and $1 for the females adds up real fast. Especially when somebody's coming
Why
to
are the females worth more?
because they have the eggs, and they can use the eggs for other bait sources.
Wow.
So, but that is a fishery. I mean, horseshoe crabs have been around for zillions of years, right?
Mhm.
They go back to the
Mhm.
dinosaurs, and people are just like, "Oh, you're overfishing them," and there's millions of horseshoe crabs. So some of them are boldly um, all over the ocean. However, there are some like he used to be able to catch blue claw crabs in the bay, and those went away. The silver eels at Christmas time, no more.
Mm.
Things like he hasn't been in the bay for 15 years. He's started fishing the ocean, so they may be populating again. But in the ocean, it's really a matter of the DEC puts really strict limits on what they can catch. And so today they say maybe they can catch 1,000 pounds of blue, of flounder, even though they can't. Tomorrow it might drop down to 400 pounds. The next day to 80 pounds. But the DEC has no rhyme or reason why they do this, and it's hard to say if things are overfished or not, because sometimes you have to throw things overboard.
Hmm.
So, but what he has found is that some fish get larger in the catch, and then they are they're 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 um they're scarce, and then they start out smaller again, and then over the years they get larger. So it's hard to say
Interesting.
if things are really overfished. Probably not as much as they say. doesn't mean that I don't advocate for not eating them. It's just that Jamie's been fishing, we met almost 30 years ago, but when I was still eating meat and he was a fisherman, and what am I going to do after being married for 12 years? Say, oops, you're a commercial fisherman, I can't be married anymore.
Right.
It's just something that that's what it is.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I would love to know what is the actual state of affairs with everything on the planet. I would love to know.
Yeah.
I believe that we are very poorly managing our resources. I believe that we are having certainly an adverse effect on most of whatever we touch. It seems so. But I would really love to know, and the way that the way that we get information and the way that we get, I guess that's it. The way we get information, it's hard to know what to believe, right? We get conflicting information all the time. What we do see though are, like lots of plastics in the ocean and lots of plastics on land. So 2 questions. Actually, a question and an observation. In your husband's work, does he ever talk about the amount of plastics in the ocean that he sees, or is that not really a thing?
No, not really a thing. I've been talking about it recently because there was, I don't know who it was, and probably Dr. Furman. He brought it up about the microplastics that are, and they are so heavily concentrated, especially when you're eating up the food chain. So now you're eating mako and tilefish and those tuna, the larger fish, loaded with that. So that's kind of one of the things that I like to point out to my clients, my patients. Like, fish is not the answer to why it's not the answer to giving up meat and eating fish. It's just not.
Right.
But, anyway, but I don't think jumping back, I don't think I ever answered your question about the books. So It was Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease, the China Study, my absolute favorite book of all time, and Food for Life. Oh, Eat to Live.
Eat to Live.
Eat to Live. Yes.
All right.
Check the title. It's right here.
And I'm going to just check, like, when was China Study published? Do you have an idea? Do you have it right there next to you?
I don't. Not the China Study.
I can look it up. I have Google.
Eat to Live.
Uh-huh.
So this is the paperback. The paperback didn't come out for a while, I think, after it was written, but 2003.
China Study was 2005.
2005. What else do I have? Look, the McDougall program. When was this written? Oh my gosh, it's like yellow.
Yeah.
The binding is yellow.
Yeah.
This one's probably even older, right? The Eat to Live. Pages are sticking together.
Uh-oh.
Here it is. Ooh, wait.
It doesn't say.
Revised it says revised 1976.
Okay, well, a while ago, right? And that was McDougall?
Yep, the McDougall program.
That's interesting. Yeah. So when I was 15, in my world, those books did not exist, and never heard of McDougall program. So, kind of like Glenn.
Actually, I have to correct myself.
We had no books to go from. We were just going by, experimentation on ourselves, right?
I have to correct myself. It wasn't 1976. That was the FDA's handbook. It's 1990. This one.
Okay, that makes sense, because I don't remember much of nothing being out there.
The old ones.
What I did? 2 other or 3 other books that I had were all about herbs, medicinal herbs. So there was one called Back to Eden by Jethro Kloss, and there were a couple others that were herbals. I want to say her last name was Grieve. The author's last name was Grieve, and that's what I used. I studied a lot about herbs, so the use of chamomile and mint and coltsfoot and just different things like that for herbal medicine. But there weren't any really. There just weren't any books other than the three I mentioned before.
It's really come. I mean, you could probably have an entire section in Barnes and Nobles right now with all the books.
Yes, and more coming all the time,
Yeah.
to which Glenn graciously contributes from time to time.
Very good.
Yeah, right. So I'm looking at our notes here. So when we talk about increasing the momentum of the movement, I guess it makes me wonder, like, what can we, if we had a magic wand and we could do anything we wanted to do, what would you choose to do to increase the momentum of the movement?
I think we need to be on television more. I know that these days people watch less television, they watch their cell phones more. But any advertisement that's on television could, of course, be across all platforms. But I would love to see advertisements that make the case against killing yourself by eating meat. And I think that should be possible.
Uh-huh.
Certainly Dr. Barnard and
That's the
PCRM,
person,
right?
that's the
Oh,
man
boys.
I think of for that.
Yeah. Go
Yeah.
Dr. Barnard.
Mm.
Right. And his billboards are so provocative. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I can't think of any of them right now, but I would. That's bold.
Yeah. Well,
Love it. Love it, right? Somebody's got
Yeah.
to speak up for us.
That's
Yeah.
right. If you could wave a magic wand, Peggy, what would you do?
I mean, the commercials against cigarette smoking were very effective. Most people don't smoke now. So I think what we need is commercials against eating meat.
Mm.
I don't know that it was the commercials against cigarette smoking that actually stopped that. Sorry, I'm playing.
What do
with
you think
the
it
board.
was?
I have to plug in here shortly. I think it was a combination of things. There was the school education, in-school education
Mm-hmm.
that taught kids. It started with the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
The kids, teaching the kids that cigarette smoking was harmful. I remember coming home and my father would have like a carton of cigarettes in his top drawer or whatever. He smoked Salem's, as I recall. And I remember coming home. Okay, I was a little bit crazy kid. I'm only a little bit crazy adult now, but as a kid, I was kind of crazy. So I remember going into his drawer and taking out his carton of cigarettes and stabbing it with a knife and then pouring ketchup on the stab marks. And then after a while, I think he got tired of wasting money on cigarettes getting stabbed like that, so he eventually stopped.
Wow.
But I think that had a lot to do with it, is the education of the next generation.
And I think that for sure, because that stopped at the root, right? It prevented smoking from starting. But I like to think that it was, we really ostracized people, and we still do.
Mm-hmm.
People who smoke. We wouldn't let them into restaurants.
Right.
They had to go into a certain section of the bar.
Right.
They
have
were
to go outside. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They were really shamed. And I think it was all it's great.
Yeah. Now there was also the whole thing about doctors used to be able to smoke in the hospital. Yeah. Were you working in hospitals at that time, Peggy? Did you
No.
Yeah, I remember being in the hospital and doctors sitting at the charting stations smoking. I remember being on a cancer ward with a guy who had lung cancer actually getting chemotherapy put in, smoking a cigarette at the same time with oxygen.
Wow.
With oxygen.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so all that got outlawed, right? That's not legal anymore. I think it was a full court press they had to put on tobacco. even to take it down, like you said, not being advertised, they took it off of billboards, they took it right off of all kinds of things. So that made a difference. Yeah.
Well, what I would love to see, I would love to see that people who are diagnosed with a new whatever, new condition, new disease, that they are offered the opportunity to treat it with plant-based diet. Now, why does that give everybody the option? Just like
Yeah.
like Paul did. They gave him the option.
Right.
He was so lucky to be in that hospital, because or else they would have just gave him meatloaf and mashed potatoes and scheduled his surgery for the next day.
That's right.
Right?
So true. So true.
So lucky.
Yeah. Right. You know, I on some level, I think it ought to be illegal the way that hospitals do with food for people who are recently diagnosed, especially for something like heart disease or high blood pressure or diabetes. It ought to be illegal to give them food that we know is detrimental.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
And I have a friend who I met when I was in graduate school. So it had to have been 20 years after that. I mean, we had kept in touch the whole time. She became the head lead dietitian, registered dietitian at St. Francis Hospital. And here in New York, St. Francis Hospital is the place to go if you got anything cardiac on Long Island. So she was the lead registered dietitian at that hospital. And in cardiac rehab, I just one of our new patients had told me, oh yeah, I had my cabbage at St. Francis, and they gave me meatloaf the next day. It was very good. So I went. I said to my friend Gail, I said, "Are you freaking kidding me? You gave him meatloaf? He weighs, he's 100 pounds overweight. He just had bypass surgery, and you fed him meatloaf." Yeah, exactly. That's like, I don't get it. What's the problem? Like, are you kidding me?
Right. That's pretty crazy. It is.
People just don't know, and like Dr. Lyle says, probably about this was going back now 15 years. He said that about 7% of our population could be happy, plant-based, vegan people.
Mm-hmm.
The other 93% will struggle and will fight it or will not do it. So, but still, if we could save 7%, without a doubt, by just offering them the suggestion.
Right. Right.
So that's my wish list.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are pretty good wishes. Yeah. Pretty good magic wand stuff. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you? What?
For me, I always go toward the children. If we could, and it's right in line with what you're both saying. If we could change our culture so that the children get taught early and often. Okay, this is food. This is not food, right? The things that are, the color blue in my shirt, that's not food, right? That is not. Or the things that never decompose, that is not food. The things that are stripped and denatured and devoid of all nutritional value, those are not food.
But how do you, excuse me, Merle, how do you tell them the things that mommy and daddy are serving you at dinner, that is not food?
This is the hard part.
Yeah.
So when I'm in schools working with kids, we have to walk a very fine line, right? Where what we do is we give them experience of whole foods. So we give them fruits and vegetables and whole grains and beans. I have not ventured into the mushroom realm because, mushrooms are kind of icky, but we give them everything else, right? And never, never, never can we say that, okay, if you're eating fast food every night because that's what's available to you or that's what works in your family, we can't have the child thinking my parents don't love me because they're feeding me junk, right? You have to, it's a fine line to walk. So what we do is we just keep offering them healthy food. Okay, try these grapes. Try these strawberries. This is a salad bar. We're going to eat the rainbow today. This is pasta with marinara sauce and zucchini. This is this. This is that. You know, we try that. Last time we were in there, we did acai smoothie bowls, and boy, weren't they lit up about that. They were
Wow.
thrilled, right? So we just keep offering them that, and we keep talking about what is food. Food is what gives your body nutrients. It allows you to grow and stay active and learn and think, and it doesn't destroy the planet. It doesn't rob anyone else of their home, right? So we talk about the impact our food system has on the rainforest and things like that. And honestly, this last time, I'm still blown away. So this is the first year we've been able to get into schools, and I'm just so honored to be able to work with these children. They're about average 10 years old. And to have them go from the first day being freaked out because there was zucchini in the tomato sauce, that was scary, to now, last session we talked about the rainforest and how our food system is robbing, it's destroying the homes of so many animals like orangutans and leopards and, you know, things like this. And to have these 10-year-olds come to me at the end and say, I don't want to eat meat anymore. I don't want to, you know, and to come at the end and like give me this big hug around my middle, because of course they're little people, you know, and say, thank you for coming and thank you for teaching us this, you know. That I think is, if I could do anything, magic wand, that we would have nutrition, real nutrition, as Glenn says, real human food taught to our children, and then allow them to make the decision. Okay, you see how our food system impacts all kinds of places all around the planet, impacts other animals beyond the concentrating animal feeding operations, right? Concentrated. It actually is robbing ecosystems. It's killing off whole sections. That's, I think, super powerful. That's what I would choose. And then the next generation, just like I used to go stab my father's cigarette carton, maybe the next generation would be more inclined to put zucchini in their spaghetti sauce or eat the rainbow days and things like that.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and when I worked with Wellness Foundation out here in Long Island, I worked with them for 12 years or so, and we were a small office of people, 5, 6 people, and our mission was to promote plant-based diet. Whether we had programs in the schools, and absolutely, Merle, just what you said, you have to be really careful about what you tell them. So our approach was always eat more of this, and secretly we would say squeeze out squeeze out what's not so healthy. But we loved it when they would go home to their parents and say, I want, buy me bananas, or I would love to eat zucchini.
Right. It's like a total big win if they come up with that.
Yeah, and then the parent says, what did you do to my kid? He's coming home and he's asking for apples.
Right? Bizarre behaviors, right? Yeah.
I love that. Oh my goodness.
Something else.
Let's see.
I am trying to stick to our topic here, but anything either of you want to bring up, by all means do.
Well, can we agree that the modern whole food plant-based movement began when I was 17 and I had that English muffin?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely, Glenn.
Without a doubt. That's fine. I was a latecomer. I'm a latecomer.
Well, I decided I'd be a vegetarian at 17, and I got up in the morning and I had an English muffin. So,
and that's where the movement
maybe
started.
We can trace the history of the plant-based movement to that breakfast.
Yeah.
But maybe that's a little self-centered. I don't know.
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure it's not.
Well, you had brought up a point in one of our meetings some time ago, and you had said, why is it so difficult to get people to behave in the way that we have been behaving for millennia, right? That we didn't always eat beans. Well, that's probably a bad example. We didn't always eat um, uh, candy, concentrated candy out of a bag that's the color of the blue of your shirt,
Mhm.
or icy blue from 7-Eleven.
Right.
That's not like, how is it that you think that works for longevity, for the planet, for
Mm.
animals?
Mm.
Totally
Mm.
not sustainable.
No,
But
it's
your point was really, it stuck with me. Like, how come how come society thinks that this new way is going to work?
it's a question, isn't it? You know, I think about this stuff a lot, actually. Unfortunately, somewhere along the line, we allowed the chemical companies to take over our food system,
Yeah, yeah.
had to have heavy influence in our government, to have heavy influence on our laws. Uh, and then we wind up with food this color, or, the color of that green dot that's behind Glenn's shoulder there. It's like, how, no, that's not really food. It's not food. I was talking to my husband last night. We went, so here, he and I go out, we have date night every Friday, and we are in search of the best vegan pizza. That's our goal. We're in Southeast Wisconsin. There's a whole lot of pizza shops around here, all over the place, several per block in some areas, right? And we were talking about, what is food and how did we come to this? And, you know, he was saying that for him, now he's a more recent convert to whole food plant-based eating, but he was saying he still loves the idea. He has deep food memories about the Jello no-bake cheesecake that his mother made for him on his 15th birthday.
Wow.
Like, ooh, I don't think I've ever had one of those. He was saying, yeah, that was the best. And to me, I saw, to me, that's not food. That's not even in a category called food. That's called a fake food-like substance that someone's created in a lab for really next to no money to fill you up with
Chemicals.
chemicals and addictive stuff.
I wonder if you would have that now, if it would still taste the same way. I don't know about you, but like Paul was saying yesterday, how he loves Coca-Cola, and I haven't had a cup of Coke in probably like 20 years, or whatever.
Yeah, right?
But so now, like I had it a couple years ago. I had a sip of it. It was awful. Awful. Ugh. I probably hurt his feelings. He's like, oh, I love Coca-Cola. I'm like, ew, it's gross.
I think he had it in the past tense. He loved.
Oh, gross. But
Yeah.
having some of that stuff again, like now, I can't even imagine chewing on a piece of chicken. Oh, like
Yeah.
the flavor,
You know,
the texture. Oh.
And there's so much wrapped up in food, right? Like, Glenn, I feel like we may be leaving you out of the conversation a little bit. You've been very quiet, but I noticed that, there's so much emotional stuff wrapped up in food. It's so much. If it was my mom and it was my 15th birthday, and maybe, for my husband, his dad had left a couple years before, and sort of it was the two sons and the mom together, right? And if she went out of her way, and I know that they struggled financially at that point, mom went out of her way to make this no-bake Jello cheesecake. That means love, right? That means everything. That's family. That's you're paying me attention. That means you care. There's so much wrapped up in food. I remember when I was a kid, my mom was a good Southern cook in the traditional African-American Southern style. And that meant that she cooked pig's feet and she cooked chitlins. I had hog maws, which is hog stomach. I had that, I remember that. And when she was cooking it, I mean, okay, I ate it. I mean, it was my mom doing the best she could, or what she thought was wonderful for me, right? So much wrapped up in that. And when I stopped eating meat, it was a big emotional thing for my mom, that I was rejecting whatever it is that she was putting on the table. And that was hard. That was hard. So, Glenn, I'm going to bring you into the conversation.
All right.
Top of the hour. Okay. When you decided to stop eating meat, did it hurt your mom's feelings?
No, I learned at that time when I told my mother that I had just become a vegetarian. She said, "What took you so long?"
Wow.
And I said, "What does that mean?" And she said, "Well, I was planning to raise you as a vegetarian from birth." I said, "What?" She said, "Yeah, I had decided to raise you as a vegetarian from birth, but my doctor talked me out of it because he said that your brain wouldn't develop and your bones wouldn't develop and you'd be weak if you survived at all. So he talked me out of it." And so, I didn't know what to do. So I raised you like I raised your sister. And I said, "But wait a minute, Mom, you're not a vegetarian. Dad's not a vegetarian. My sister, Sheila, she's not a vegetarian. Why were you going to raise me as a vegetarian?" And she said, "Because when I was pregnant with you, you felt like a vegetarian."
Hey, Mom.
Yes, no, yeah, exactly. Bright light.
Right?
I can't explain that.
Because she was brilliant. That's all.
Yeah.
Mm,
Easy answer. She was brilliant.
wow, cool.
Yeah.
We look back on things that happened, like, I think as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about when I was pregnant with my first son, who is now totally lives the vegan lifestyle and used to stand on the chair in the dining room and scream, "Why does everything have to be so healthy?" Because this was not his thing. He wanted beef and whatever, cheese, and smother it with whatever. And then I got this text one day, and he said, "Mom, my back doesn't hurt anymore." This was probably, he was like 19, maybe. "My back doesn't hurt anymore. My wrists don't hurt. I've been cutting back on the meat." Right? And then he turned into just a full-blown vegan lifestyle. But anyway, when I was pregnant with him, I had such bad morning sickness. Like they had to actually put me on compazine, is for
Yeah. To keep you from throwing up. Yes.
oh my gosh,
Yeah.
because I was so bad. But the only thing I could eat was corn muffins and chocolate pudding. So chocolate pudding, of course, isn't vegan, but I was thinking, well, maybe Lucas was giving me that message while he was still while I was still pregnant. But no, it was the chocolate pudding that I was eating, and that was, But yeah, I had lost actually from the day I found out I was pregnant to 2 weeks after I had Lucas, I had lost 10 pounds. So
Wow.
people struggle to get that baby weight off.
Yeah.
I
Not
was
you,
I
huh?
was thinner than I was when I got pregnant.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. That hyperemesis gravidarium,
Thank
where,
you.
yes, that's the term. Yeah. For when that's hyperemesis, way too much vomit for a pregnant person. Gravidarium.
Ooh,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
maybe that's what I should have named Lucas.
Hyperemesis. No, don't name him that.
I have a question for both of you. Excuse me. I was watching Bill Maher last night, and he had the author, I think his name is Eric Schlosser, on, who wrote Fast Food Nation. So, he wrote a book against McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chicken, and he's well aware of how these fast food franchises are, making America fat and sick. And at the end of the show, he said something like, "Now, I'm not a vegetarian or a vegan, but people have to realize, not to eat so much meat." So my question is, why do so many people are like that? What is it? Why do they think that I'm not a crazy, I'm not a vegetarian or a vegan, but, you shouldn't overdo the meat. Well, if it's unhealthy to eat a lot of it, why is it healthy to eat a little bit of it? What's he thinking? Why is there's always this disclaimer like, well, I'm not a vegetarian or a vegan? Do you
Well,
hear that kind of stuff a lot? And what do you think is going through people's minds?
I have an idea, but Peggy, you can go first if you like.
Oh, well, I was just going to say that I hear some of that, like when I say at work, people will talk about what they ate. Oh, I have a friend that always says, "Oh yeah," and I had brown rice with eggplant, and well, I know you don't like it, but yeah, it had chicken on it. Like, why do you have to say that? I always say, like, it's okay that you eat it. Don't point me out like I'm the bad guy or I'm
The
so
loony.
different. And the side, and then more, I'll let you. So my son, who's vegan, when he first changed his diet, I remember we were driving. He was actually driving, and he was in tears driving. And he said to me, he said, "Well, I'm the one who doesn't eat animals. Why does everybody think that I'm the freak?" And it's just like, I'm like, oh my gosh, this kid is suffering because of his beliefs around food. So,
Yeah.
right? Isn't that crazy? So
Yeah.
they want to single us out because we're not like, I think in a way, maybe are we embarrassing them, or are we calling them out silently saying, well, we decide not to eat meat because of my health. I want my health to be such and such, and I want the planet to be such and such, and I don't want to eat animals.
Mm.
So maybe that they are offended in a way, and they say, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
What,
I mean,
what
I think that's part of it. So culturally, we are a meat eating society, and our government supports that and encourages that and gives financial incentives to meat growers and egg board people and pork council people, and right there's a whole support system. I mean, they say that's one of the biggest corporate welfare type things that we have, is the way that we support the animal product industry. So that's one thing. And it's certainly been taught to us over many, few generations at least. And I was going to say many years, that meat is an important part of how you have a healthy body, right? Milk does a body good. And, real men eat beef. And, that's how you get to be a big strapping bodybuilder, weightlifter guy, is by eating so many pounds of protein in a day. And then there's also the part where, and this is more recently, certainly in our lifetimes, where Oprah got sued for being on her show and saying, I gave up meat a long time ago, or I can't stand the idea of eating meat. She got sued over that. You probably know that story better than I do.
I co-authored, that was my first book, Howard Lyman's book,
That's
Mad
right.
Cowboy. And what she said was, that does it. I'll never eat a hamburger again.
Mm.
And there were some lunatic ranchers in Texas who thought she didn't have a right to say, I'll never have a hamburger
Right.
again. And there was a trial in Amarillo, Texas, to determine whether or not Oprah had the right to say, I'll never have a hamburger again. And it turns out she had a right to say.
Which is just nuts.
Yeah.
We do have freedom of speech, and saying I'm not going to eat a hamburger again is not quite like yelling fire in a movie theater, right?
No.
It's not the same thing. So we have this whole cultural thing, mystique around animal foods. One of the things that's going on right now in Illinois, so they just this school year changed their school food law to say that children can request, or their parents can request, a plant-based lunch, and the child can receive it to include the milk, right? Well, there's people that work in the schools, the teachers and the food service staff are absolutely livid that children should be able to request a plant-based lunch. They shouldn't have to drink milk. They should be able to drink soy milk. I just talked to a lady down in Southern Illinois. Now, she is in the middle of Illinois farm country where they're growing a lot of cows, and they got pork and they got dairy, right? The day that she's the food service director at a school, she made sure the kids had water and they had vegetable juice to drink instead of milk. She said the day that started, 3 teachers marched into the principal's office to complain that the children need milk at every meal and they should not be having this vegetable juice and water nonsense. I mean, there's a whole world built, and I'll add to that one last little thing, that if you're in the middle of farm country where people are growing cows and pigs, animal farming and dairy, well, then it's taken as a personal affront. You're disrespecting my livelihood, my family's livelihood, you're threatening our income. So, yeah, I think that has a lot to do with why we are the way we are around our food patterns, our eating patterns. It's a cultural, very well interwoven with our entire culture.
But it's changing, right?
Yes.
It is changing slowly.
Yes.
Slowly.
Now we could say as a segue to wrap it up, because we're at the top of the hour already, beyond the top of the hour. That is why we are in the Sage Circle Alliance, to try and move that message forward out to a broader audience. Because Glenn, as many books as you write in collaboration with other people, we can't get that message out fast enough. And Peggy, all of the
I'm writing as fast as I can.
Come on, Glenn. faster, you know? As much as
that carpal tunnel.
I know it. We can't get the message out fast enough. We have to get it to a broader audience. So if we work together, we collaborate with so many different voices and so many different faces. Yesterday, we were talking about diversity and the importance of how many different people can we get to give this message out, to how many different audiences can we get it to. That's what's going to make the difference. So on that note, do either of you have anything else you'd like to add?
Well, can we close with some words from Dick Gregory, since
Yes.
he was the one who inspired me to be a vegetarian, and I think
too.
you said that he inspired you too, Meryl. Dick Gregory fasted against the war in Vietnam, and he went something like 2 years, I think, a year and a half, 2 years, on nothing but fruit juices. I didn't think that was possible. I saw him when he was about 98 pounds giving a talk, and he wasn't going to eat again until the war ended. And finally, I think it was 1975, America pulled out of Vietnam, and he announced that he was ending his fast. And he was asked, Mr. Gregory, would you fast again if America got involved in another war? And he said, I wouldn't fast again if they were fighting in my living room. I think let's close with those words.
Yeah, right.
Great. That's
Yeah.
great. Very good.
Yeah. Yeah. He was a powerful, powerful force. Certainly had a lot of influence on me when I was a kid. All right. Well, scrolling along the bottom, we have the sagecirclealliance.org website. And here we have our social media, a couple social media tags. You can check us out there. You are invited, if you are a whole food, plant-based, health-oriented, or animal compassion-oriented, or planetary stewardship-oriented kind of person, check us out. This is our charter member drive. And there's a 10% discount right now. If you go on the website, you can find that. And I think that is about it. Thank you, Glenn and Peggy. This has been.
Thank you, Marilyn, Peggy.
So much fun.
Yeah, definitely. You guys have a fabulous weekend, and it is Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to both of you.
Thank you. And to you, Merle.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it should be a good plant-based. Oh, I'll just finish up. So somebody, we're doing vegan, right? It's a vegan Mother's Day because I'm making the food. Well, not really all of it, but my brother-in-law asked if he can. Oh, it's all going to be like vegan. Like, should I bring something? I thought, you're not gonna die.
It's only one meal.
Yes, exactly. Should I bring something? It's all vegan. Don't bother.
Tell him,
All
bring
right.
acai smoothie bowls. Okay.
Ah, yum, 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 yum. All right.
Right.
Bye, both of you.
Yeah.
What-
Bye-bye. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.